Good afternoon. I'd like to bring the Finance Committee meeting to order today. We'd like to welcome all of you, and I know you've heard us say this before. We got a pretty full agenda. It might not look like a lot, but the items are probably going to involve some discussion. So with that saying, the first thing that we normally do is approve the consent agenda first. Council members, do you have any items that you would like to be pulled? C1?
C3.
C3? Any others?
C7.
C7? I'll take C4D. Any others?
If there are none, I approve the balance.
I'll second the motion, Madam.
It has been moved and seconded. All those approved, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, the first item on the consent.
Item C1, resolution authorizing the sale of certain city-owned property at 1600 Harrison Avenue under the upset bid procedure of North Carolina General Statute 160A-269 in the North Ward.
Thank you. What I'm looking for, I guess, is because there was no photo in the book, and I guess I'd like to know what the residents, how the community feels about it, because the house has been blighted for a while, and I'm wondering, you know, are we going to have more of the same, or how do we ensure that that doesn't happen, that we don't get another house that's maybe an absentee landlord and it's more of the same?
Well, this is a two-story brick house, and it has a one-story addition on the back of it. So on the outside, the appearance does not look too bad on the outside. But it's been vandalized inside. It's been stripped of its metal. In the one-story addition in the back, the floor is collapsing on it. So it does have a lot of problems internally. We do have an offer from a buyer who is an investor. The situation that we get into when we have properties that need a lot of repairs, homeowners cannot come in and get a mortgage on a property that needs a lot of repairs done to it. So investors who are going to come in and repair the house are really the only buyers in most situations like this. And we've had this property for some time, and because of the needed repairs, we've not had any offers to purchase the property. And this is one where we would not have to spend money to maybe eventually have it torn down. We can get $16,000. If it continues to deteriorate, eventually we may have to spend another $10,000 on it just to have it demolished. So that's kind of the status of the property.
Councilmember.
Yes. Madam Chair, the key question that you asked was about the homeowners, but something that Mr. Gordon said that I have a concern with. Even though you get an investor and you say you cannot get a homeowner to purchase it.
Yes, ma'am.
And I've said to the city manager, and I've also said to Mr. Brooks, I think that we need to do a different way of trying to encourage them to be homeowners. Because that street, as you know, it's a pretty nice street. People put an investment there, the new area that they added. So how much when you, and I even suggested that the Habitat people could go through neighborhoods maybe and probably look at houses to continue with the neighborhood concern and neighborhood residents to be there. Now you say it's going to be $16,000, but I don't think you've given quite enough information myself, Madam, concerning you know, when you rent to somebody and an investor gets that, if it's not in the price, it's more of a headache than anything else. So to fix that up, if a resident was interested in that, how much would that are you talking about?
I would say you need at least $50,000 to repair the house and get it livable.
Well, why did it stay so long?
Well, this house kind of got caught up in the economic downturn, and mainly because of the condition of the house, there were just no takers, no offers. And as I said, the addition on the rear, the floor is collapsed in the rear part of the house, and no one was willing to pay the prices that we were asking, and we continually lowered the price trying to get it sold. And eventually we had this offer at $16,000, which is the first offer that we've really had on the property.
One more question or request. I'd like to have a sense of, if we support this, and I will, the time of repair. Are there guidelines, just like when these homes come to a community and general government? And I'd like to also have a photo of the before, what it looks like now. And I'd like to have a photo of an after or process of while the investor is repairing it. I am hoping that the repair doesn't take, you know what I mean, a year, 2 years, because at that point then, you know, I haven't gotten any calls on this property yet, but I'm sure now that it's out here and someone's going to purchase it, and the neighborhood normally feels like, okay, we're getting ready to see some improvement. So I'd like us to follow this one closely if we can.
We'll be happy to get you some pictures and supply you with some information on what they anticipate their time frame would be to get it livable.
Thank you. With that, can I get a motion for
Move approval.
Madam, I'll be abstaining from this one.
all those in favor? Aye. Yes. Second, I'm sorry. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And one abstention. Item C3.
Item C3, resolution modifying a previously approved economic development agreement for the expansion of Wake Forest Innovation Quarter.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Finance Committee. In 2013, you all approved an economic development agreement with Wake Forest University and Wexford Science and Technologies to develop or redevelop a 230,000 square foot building located at the corner of 5th Street and Vine, formerly known as Building 90 South. They're also building a new parking deck in conjunction with this. The total investment was going to be about $90.9 million, including $6 million for the parking deck. And then within 5 years of the disbursement of the grant funds, the new facility would generate up to about 450 jobs, and with 50 of those being newly created and having a minimum starting salary of at least $26,000. Redevelopment of Building 90 South is well underway. However, construction of the parking deck has not yet begun due to extensive stormwater runoff issues regarding the lot at the southwest corner of 7th Street and Linden. This request is to move 1 block south and 3 blocks west and build the exact same parking that was going to be built at the corner of 7th and Linden, now build it at the corner of 5th and Patterson. All other conditions of the original 2013 approval would remain the same. Representatives are here today from the developers, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Just comment, just to be on the record that we have it in the minutes, that this this resolution would not add any additional resources from the city into a project, nor would it extend any of the agreements that are already in place for this specific agreement, but it would only transition the location that was specified in the original agreement.
That is correct.
That's all I wanted in the minutes. Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Burke.
Well, I guess they all know I'm a cheerleader for this project because I knew how it was, and had we not done anything as a city, had someone to come in to join with us, it would be a very bad area. And as I have said to you on occasions, how much I appreciate when I ride through the area and I see the progress that's been made. And so when we have people who will come in, help us as partners to make a difference for areas of our city, it makes a big difference. So, Madam, if you're ready for a motion, I move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. C7.
C4D. Oh, C4D.
Yes.
Resolution awarding purchase order for computers from Dell Marketing, LP.
technology.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The question that I have, and I think I've sent this to the city manager before, asking for a report of when we replace equipment, technology equipment, going forward, it would be interesting to see where this equipment is going. I know it's not going to be disposed of, but it's being reused or recycled. I think the council needs to see where the technology is going to ensure that the community is benefiting from it as well, and what communities are benefiting from the computers. Do you have anything that you can tell us, or?
I am aware, in talking with the Deputy Director, Tom Kareska, from the city's IS department, I know they're working together currently with the city's police department, particularly in relation to this agenda item before you. They're looking backwards. I think you had requested about the past 3 years of information, and he's working on that to prepare a memo to you and the council for that would contain that information. But a tradition, I think what he's going to inform you of is that for the most part, they strip down those units. They take just about anything. They use them as replacements across the city. By the time that those units are available and are declared as surplus to the needs of the city, there is not a lot of value for those units. One of which is they remove the hard drives, of course, off of every one of those units to protect the city. But he's currently preparing that information, and will provide that for you.
Thank you. And I would hope that, again, that if we're buying all this equipment, that basically everybody in the city has some form of technology, and it's relatively recycled through, or they get updates.
Correct.
I would, again, find it interesting to see, because of the money, the taxpayers' money, how much of this equipment is given back to the communities in need. We already know, we go to enough conferences where we see urban core, poor communities already lack a lot of the broadband and Wi-Fi and the technology. And I think it would be a good thing for us if out of our stock, suggestion, Mr. Garrity, that we begin to give some of this technology back to our community and our youth and our seniors and those folks that are looking for jobs, whether it's through the recreation departments or through some of the nonprofits that run programs that teach them how to use computers. It would be great if, families could take a computer home with them. Yes, Councilman Burke.
It seems like the city manager would just give you some background. This should not be anything new. He's heard this more than one time. You ought to be able to.
Yes. We have, in the past, over the last 10 years, we have done several different options. We have donated computers to nonprofits, to community development corporations. We have put them in rec centers and other locations that WinstonNet serves. We also, at least once or twice, sold them to employees to try to give more access to our employees to have basic computers for home. But we're going to bring a report on that, as well as options. I think we can find a way with as many computers as we replace each year to set aside part of those for community engagement.
Thank you. Thank you.
Madam, I need to say
Yes.
this too. We have some of these computers set up in recreation centers, and they are getting dusty, which means something is not being carried out the proper way. And the information that you ask about, there are a lot of children who are in schools, and they can't do some of their work because they don't have computers. And they have been emphasized that we need to go into these neighborhoods and into these schools and find these children. And in some of the areas where we have really poor children. One thing we did do, go up there with Lur and put computers there. And I would hope that all of the families up there should have computers. I think that kind of report needs to be given to the chairman so she can share it with us so we know what's going on. Thank you.
Any other questions? We need a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Next item, please.
Item C7, consideration of items relating to construction of Fire Station 8 replacement. Resolution allowing withdrawal of a bid for construction of Fire Station Number 8 replacement at 2417 Reynolda Road. And B, resolution awarding contract for Fire Station 8 replacement.
I just had a quick question, not about what's being done, because I think that was spelled out very clearly in the packet, but I was really just more looking for a time frame. Does this affect our time frame for breaking ground and moving forward on the construction of the new facility?
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, this would allow us to begin construction early next spring.
Okay, so that's pretty much on target, or that's
Staying on target. Obviously, there's demolition work that has to be done,
Right.
but this is staying on target.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want a motion, Madam?
May we have a motion for approval, please?
Move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor? Let it be known by saying aye. Aye. We are now moving to the general agenda. We have 7 items, and Madam Secretary, may we have the first item, please?
Item G1, ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the City Code entitled Administration, establishing a Community Agency Allocation Committee.
Good
Yes.
afternoon, Madam Chair Adams, members of the committee, Mayor Jones.
Can you give us a very brief update, Mr. Minor, on this project?
Currently, we've held our first workshop in October. That was well attended again this year. Just recently, last Thursday, we had our technical workshop as well. Technical workshop is the process where community agencies attend with specific questions. So we'll give them a brief overview, and we'll actually work with them with their applications. And we now have a due date of November 20th, 5 p.m. is the deadline for all applications. And right now we're just fielding calls. Our staff has had a few calls from other community agencies just to answer questions for those who could not attend. So at this point in time, we are just waiting for nominations from the council for members of the allocation committee, if that's the route that this committee chooses to take. That's where we are.
Any questions from the committee members? Council members? Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Adams. Thank you, Mr. Minor.
Yes.
Members of the council, members of the committee, first of all, I thank you for allowing us to send this item back to committee just for a brief discussion. I will state that I have no problem with the Citizens Committee. I think it's a wonderful idea to provide that oversight that's necessary to make sure we're protecting the taxpayer dollars. I just wanted to make a couple of adjustments. Number one, I think we ought to want to find a way to help new agencies to get to the table. And secondly, provide the Citizens Committee with direction based on citizen feedback, based on the relevant needs of our community. So I've made a couple of suggestions on how I think we can do that. If you turn to Attachment A, which is the 2016-2017 Community Agency Scoring Guide. If you look under strategy, which is in bold, there are 3 items there. One that discusses need, strategy, and performance. I am proposing to make an adjustment to item B under strategy. It currently reads, is the proposal consistent with relevant plans and strategies? I truly believe we should be providing the Citizen Committee with an annual strategic plan which outlines some of the shifting community issues that we face. I know there are several members here at this round table who have taken a particular interest, and rightfully so, in poverty. I've taken a particular interest in other council members with ex-offenders, and we know we've got a number of ex-offenders who return to this community, whether it be innovation, arts, veteran affairs, whatever it is, whatever the needs of our community are that year. I propose having some kind of strategic plan which gives the committee direction. So I'd like for item B under strategy to read, is the proposal consistent with the City Council's annual grantee agency strategic plan? And again, every year we put forth that strategic plan to the committee, which outlines what we think, based on citizen feedback, the direction the city should be going. Before I move down to other, I'd also made a suggestion that under points available, here the total points available for this particular item is 15 points. I have made a suggestion to kind of issue those points in the following manner. For need under item A, instead of 8 points, I'd ask that we look at 5. For strategy, which is the item that I'm suggesting that we amend, I'd ask that we look at 10 points. And for performance, As the program had prior successful performance, I'd ask that we allocate 5 points, which still gets us to that 15-point window that we need in order to move forward on the strategy. Secondly, under other, item A, item B talks about materials. I'm proposing that we add an item C, which is a contemporary bonus. And again, we want to try to get new agencies to the table. Under this contemporary bonus, I'd like to add the language, is the program funding request newly submitted or recently funded within the last 10 years. Again, that helps us to turn the wheel to get new grantee agencies to the table so that we're not giving the same dollars to the same people who are doing the same work. We want to be able to help to guide where the dollars go because they're tax dollars, and we need to make sure we allocate them and protect them. Lastly, I'm asking that we reallocate that point structure, kind of like we did earlier, I've suggested earlier. Overall impression, I'd ask for 5 points instead of 10. Materials, I'd ask for 5 points. And then the contemporary bonus that I just suggested is the program funding requests newly submitted or recently funded within the last 10 years, allocating a total of 5 points. It still gets us to the 15-point window and a total possible point schedule of 100 points. But I think it addresses making sure we get new grantee agencies to the table and that we are providing that annual oversight and direction to our Citizens Committee.
Thank you. Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other comments? Yes, Councilmember Montgomery.
One just on the thoughts from Councilmember Taylor on a couple of those. I agree wholeheartedly, particularly when we talk about strategy as a community. I think it's very important, and I've said this from sitting in this capacity in the past, that as we look out at our community, what are our goals and what have we set to achieve as goals? I think there are certain areas that we as a community have set goals and standards that we wanted to achieve, and because of that, organizations responded to provide the needs based upon what was set as the goal. And I think in the same manner as this, in terms of where are the areas of impact that we desire to impact, and therefore requesting the community to respond to how do they see their organizations able to help the community reach those goals as a community, and not just continuing to do the same thing, although it may be impactful things that are taking place. If there's an understanding that there's a need for impact in other areas, how do we get organizations to take a look at how they can respond to the needs in those areas in an impactful way? And so I think that it makes sense to have something within the process that helps the organization take a look at how they respond to the needs in the areas that have been identified and that we consistently hear as a community.
I think both of you good comments. Again, want to thank staff for working on this. I know that it's another chore that we gave you, but you tackled it great. I'm in agreement with the two council members in that the main focus of this allocation committee, again, or commission, is to, again, help us to get to the next level of where the tax dollars are going. It's no different than in business. We've got to see, are they performing at the level that they need to perform? The one change is, though, that in our communities, you have new organizations coming into being every year now, or every other year. And they might not be as big as some of the organizations that have been doing this over time, but they give the communities, they provide resources to the community that's not there either. So, it's not like as we move forward that we're going to continue to see the same organizations. We just want everybody to understand that those groups that come forward with a great plan and they have a little track record and they can prove that they are making a difference in these, particularly the communities that need it the most, then they need to be given just as much consideration as the bigger organizations. And with that, if there are no more comments, yes, Councilmember Light.
And I certainly agree that giving newer organizations who are going to be effective in working in certain problem areas is wonderful. But at the same time, we can't throw out the window our heavy hitters who bring in the economic development or the economic gains that the city gets from those organizations. So, I mean, it's going to have to be a careful balancing act.
Yes, Councilmember Taylor.
Yeah, I think Councilman Blight, you bring up an excellent point. We can't throw out, our moneymakers, so to speak, those people who drive the economic engine of the city. But I think if you look at the proposal, based on the funding strategy or the point strategy, we are able to provide a healthy balance. I think we're able to do both. We're still allocating small amounts of points. They do add up to allow newer agencies to get to the table and to provide that oversight. But still, we're not overlooking those people who've been in the trenches, doing the work, and making a difference in our city. So I think that's an excellent point.
Any more comments?
Yes, if I may, just one last comment. And I think also in the sense of these minor changes, what I would suggest are minor changes, also cause those who normally do apply for dollars to be more innovative in what they do. And I don't think there's anything wrong with looking and relooking and continuing to develop the impact of what you already have. So,
and all what we're asking or saying is we're looking for the people or the organizations that's been doing this continuous improvement, not to always just rest assured that you're going to get the little pot of money based on what you've been doing for 15 or 20 years. If the problem is not being eradicated, if the problem is not diminishing and we're seeing improvements in those areas, and then we also, as you see, we plugged in partnerships. Just like the city has to work collaboratively with others, we're looking for these organizations too to work with each other in that some of them are doing the same thing, but maybe you can do it better if you partner with someone and you can get more people involved in your program. Any more comments? And with that, I need a motion for approval with the added changes. And Councilmember Taylor, will you ensure that they get that for the minutes?
I shall, Madam Chair.
Okay.
if there's no other questions, I would move for approval of acceptance of the amendments brought up by Councilmember Taylor.
I second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Next agenda, please. Item
G2, consideration of items relating to permanent financing for development of rental housing known as the Pepper Building in the Northwest Ward. A, resolution authorizing permanent financing for development of 54 units of rental housing known as the Pepper Building, and B, ordinance amending the project budget ordinance for the City of Winston-Salem for the fiscal year 2015-2016.
Yes, Mr. Brooks.
Good afternoon, Committee Chair Adams and other committee members. This item is an authorization for permanent finance and commitment of up to $1.6 million for the redevelopment of 54 units of rental housing in the historic rehab Pepper Building, which is located in the Northwest Ward. This item was presented at the Finance Committee meeting last month in August, and it involves Pepper LLC. They have purchased the Pepper Building located at 104 West 4th Street, and they are proposing to use the first floor for commercial development, which would include a restaurant, and then to convert the upper floors into 54 units of rental housing. The development would consist of 54 one-bedroom, one-bath units, 5 two-bedroom, two-bath, and 5 studio one-bath units, and the sizes would range from 310 to 768 square feet, and the rent ranges would be from $675 to $1,218 per month. And we've listed the amenities that these units would contain: high ceilings, walk-in closets, Energy Star appliances, garbage disposal, dishwasher, washer-dryer hookups. The development itself will have a laundry room with security and a storage space. We discussed with the developer the desire to have affordable housing, and the developer has agreed to set aside 6 of the 54 units, which would be 11% of the project, for workforce-eligible tenants for a 15-year term. However, the term on the affordable housing would be the same term as the city's loan, which is typically 15 to 20 years. So whatever the final term that is negotiated would be, that would be the same term for the affordable housing units. So if it's 20, it would be 20. The The rents on those affordable units would be $575 per month and would be able to reach households with incomes below 80% of the area median income. The developer, as I mentioned earlier, is Mike Coe, and he's developed several properties in the downtown area. He has not received city financial assistance in the past, and he is the owner of Coe Electric and Plumbing, and Mr. Tom Skinner is a local businessman who is the founder and president of the Phoenix Packaging Company and the owner of Skinner Warehousing. Alan Amsler is CEO and president of McCrory Construction, based in Columbia, South Carolina. And we have looked at credit reports and checked references, and they were all checked to be satisfactory. So the total project cost is estimated to be $7.9 million, and funding sources will consist of bank financing, federal and state historic tax credits, equity from the partners, and the requested city financing of $1.6. And the city financing would be provided as a long-term, low-interest loan. Terms of assistance will be structured to meet the city's proposed guidelines for the workforce housing, as mentioned before. And as you have heard us mention many times, city funds are provided as gap financing, so the final rate and terms will be backed into at the completion of the financing package and as determined by the requirements of the investors in the first mortgage loan. The city's financing would be subordinate to the first mortgage construction loan and a bridge loan. So this resolution provides a 1.6 subordinate mortgage loan for the Pepper Building and is presented for your consideration. Mr. Coe and Skinner, Mr. Coe and Mr. Skinner are here if you have questions from them.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Any questions? Councilmember Montgomery.
Couple. The total project cost is at $7.9 million, and then the loan request is at $1.6 million.
Yes.
And what is our standard percentage participation?
I believe we try not to do any more than 20% gap financing.
And then on the, and I asked these questions the last time, I just want to make sure they're again in the record. On the MWBE participation, there would be the same requirements on this project in terms of MWBE participation in terms of contracts because of the dollars received from this.
Absolutely. MWBE and Section 3 and Davis-Bacon.
And then you mentioned in the comments that you made that the two pieces that there would be 6 units set aside for affordability, and what we have, it states 5 in the document that I'm reading. It says 5 units. The owner agrees to set aside 5 units of the total units to be offered to households at or below 80% of area median income for a 15-year period, and that is in the actual Exhibit A. There's just conflicts on what's in there, so make sure all that is the same. So it's 6.
To my understanding, it's supposed to be 6 units, correct? Yes.
Okay. And then, as it stated here, it says 15 years, but you stated that it would go as the same term of the loan that would be in place, and the standard piece of that would be normally 20 years. So whatever that would be, it would be the term of the loan. And so, again, making sure that the language and what we approve states that and not what we currently have in the document. And on that same piece of that, I would just say again, I think this is a good project in a sense of what the community has been looking for a long time to see this property develop. The only portions that I continue to look at this and ask questions about is just the dollar amount compared to the total project cost. And Mr. Cole and others, I think, are taking a great leap in terms of making investments, and I applaud them for that. I just look at the amount that we're going to be loaning out for this compared to other projects, and we have another project on this that's more, and in the comparison of those two projects, just kind of looking, even though they're two totally different projects, just that dollar amount. And so for me, that's just one of the pieces that I'm looking at. in looking at this, was there any question ever looked at that dollar portion compared to the total project cost?
From our perspective, no. We looked at them as two separate projects.
No, I'm talking about this. Just this. Was there any question on this about our participation and where we were? Was there ever? Okay. Okay.
Mayor Joy.
Thank you. Councilmember raised some good points. I just wanted to, I said this I think about every time, but wanted to say Mr. Coe agreed to the set aside of the workforce units before the city actually adopted the program, so I congratulate him on this. And as Councilmember Montgomery mentioned, this is a project that's been batted around from, I think there have been at least 3 developers have tried to make it work over the years, so it's good to see, I think, a local developer who has proven that he can do these projects to take it over. And I would just point out that this is a loan and that the city will get the money back and we can recirculate these dollars for other projects, so that's exciting. And as Councilmember Burke knows, the city always had the reputation of structuring so many of our deals as loans, and so our program income and our housing reports always show the high participation. So I congratulate staff for setting it up this way, and I agree with Councilmember Richardson.
Yes, Councilmember Burke.
Yes, I was going to say to Mr. Coe and Mr. Skinner, I was going to ask Mr. Skinner first. When I was studying psychology and getting my degree, are you indicating that Skinner that we've had? But I want to say to Mr. Coe that I do appreciate the partnership that you have developed with the city. Some people may not know it, but Mr. Coe did not start like some white men. He struggled to get where he got. He did not have anything but a will and a desire to have something. He did his the hard way. And when I looked at these apartments, the mayor and I, we was at a ribbon cutting the other day, and they had nice one-bedroom apartments. And I told him, I said, I would love to live in one of these. Well, I'm going to say, and I believe that Mr. Coe has tried to do everything. And we've heard people emphasize up here wanting people with certain incomes, as Mr. Montgomery and Mr. Taylor and the chairman and the rest of us, Mr. Bessie, wanting to make sure they meet the needs of some of the people on lower income. And I feel that you're doing that. I would love to live in one of these myself. I would love, I'm going to tell you what I would love to do. I would love to have my home, keep it, and then rent one of those so I could come down and walk during the day and have my meals, and it's lovely. And I look forward to it being a completion of a job that you've started to make downtown a better place. And I want people to understand this. We could have had a dead downtown, but there were some people who took the risk to help us to get it where we're trying to get it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman McIntosh.
First, I do want to say thank you to Mike for being an urban pioneer and sticking his neck out when very few other people were willing to do that in downtown. I do have a question about our position. Will we be in second position on this loan? Will there be anybody else in line ahead of us besides the first mortgage holder, first lien holder?
Yes, we'll be in a subordinate position.
Okay. And last time when we talked about this at committee, we weren't sure, or Mike wasn't sure if he had the other lending sources lined up, and I just wanted to find out if that was the case now, if he's got his other lending partners in place.
I spoke with him right before the meeting, and he indicated he did. Prior to this meeting, it was my understanding he was still working on that, but he may want to address that.
Yes.
Come to the
Could you come to the mic, please, and state your name and address.
Mike Coe. As you were asking, yes, I was trying to get a commitment letter to bring with me tonight, but the Bank of Ozark does not give commitment letters. They give a term letter, which should be coming to Richie pretty soon, but it'll be the Bank of Ozarks, which bought Bank of Carolinas, I think. So that's the one they're doing their transition right now. So he was coming tonight too to speak. The guy was, but he wasn't able to come because everybody was out of town doing their transition from Carolinas to Bank of Ozark. But yeah, we do have that, and then they wanted to make sure what y'all were talking about is they will be a first and y'all will do a subordinate for a second. I think that's how they said it. And,
Great. I'm excited to see that building occupied and up and running, and
well,
wish you all the best on it.
Viv, you know, spend the night in her unit up there too.
Yeah, not okay.
Thank you. Councilman Montgomery?
It's staff question. On the loan itself, when those dollars are paid back, where do those funds go back to? Where is that paid into?
It will go back to the original fund source that it originated from.
Which is?
I believe these are
Bonds.
That was a jail.
GO bonds.
Right. So in what category of use?
Housing.
I just want that in the minutes. that
Housing.
those dollars are to be used when paid back. Those will be used again for housing purposes. All right.
Okay. That was a trick question.
Yeah. Councilmember Taylor?
Yeah, I just wanted to state that I do believe this is a good project. As been stated, this is a loan, and when the money is repaid back, it does go to housing, which we can use for projects in other areas of the community. We always want to build and grow downtown. I think as we visit other cities, we see how the strength of downtown makes a difference in the perception of that city, getting more people to move to the city, more tax dollars. But we have to make sure that we're concentrating in other areas. I think we have the opportunity and ability to do that by supporting this project. I also like the fact that there are several units that are available. We call it affordable housing, but I like the idea that no matter what your socioeconomic status is, you can live in downtown. I think that is the house that this city and this council is attempting to build. And speaking of which, one of my favorite points for Mr. Cole is what I heard from Mr. Brooks and what I've learned being on this council. Mr. Cole hasn't received any city assistance up until this point. And I think that's something that's very important to note. There are a lot of people who continue to come back to the well. And I think this council has started to send a clear signal to everyone that we want to make sure that we're spreading the love to all of our communities and to everyone who wants to participate in the city of Winston-Salem, and not just the same usual suspects. So, Mr. Cole, we thank you for bringing this project to the city. I understand that there's a couple of developers that attempted it. It never worked. And hopefully, I think with our assistance, we'll be able to make it happen this time. And I appreciate all that you do, and I will be supporting this when it comes to council.
One last comment I would like to make regarding the 6 units. They won't be clustered together. No. The 6 units will be dispersed throughout the complex so that it will not stand out which units are affordable from the others.
Right. And each one of them have a big window just like the rest of them. It doesn't matter the cost of $575 or $1,000. You have the same amenities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole, for everything that you've done. And your address, please.
My address?
Yes, for the record.
33 Suite 100 North Trade Street.
Thank you.
I live, I work, and sleep right downtown, 15 years now.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
May we have a motion?
Move
please?
approval.
Second.
All those, it's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Next item, Madam Secretary.
Item G3, consideration of items related to 757 North LLC in the East Ward. A resolution authorizing the sale of certain city-owned land under the upset bid provisions of North Carolina General Statute 168-269 and authorizing the city to provide financial assistance to 757 North LLC. And B, information on request for financial assistance for 757 North LLC.
Mr. Page.
Good afternoon again. I'll start A and maybe go into B a little bit, and if we need to go into more into detail on B, Mr. Brooks can fill in the gaps there. But starting with A, back in July of 2014, the city authorized selling a portion of land located at the corner of 7th, Martin Luther King, Chestnut, and Patterson to Gola CDC. A portion of that land has eventually been developed with a daycare center that opened in 2014. The remaining 1 3/4 acres has been under option by Gola, and the council authorized selling that land back in 2014 to Gola under the provisions to carry out to a nonprofit carrying out a public purpose. So we didn't go through any type of upset bids as part of that process. Gola has been working with their development partner, Laurel Street Residential, for the last year plus to put pen to paper and design plans for how this property would be developed. And as part of that, they've also talked about the partnership and Gola's participation in the overall partnership. As the discussions have gone on and been more finalized, it's been determined that the provision that we originally sold the land to Gola under the nonprofit carrying out a public purpose would not have allowed them to sell the land to Laurel Street Residential. So as a result, we're coming back to you tonight to bring an item to change the statute under which we're selling the land. So instead of selling the land to a nonprofit carrying out a public purpose, we're now proposing to sell it to a under the upset bid provisions. So that changes completely. So once Gola acquires the land, they can in turn sell the land to the partnership that they'll be part of, which is 757 North. And that partnership includes both Gola, Laurel Street, and others. We've received an offer from 757 North to actually purchase the land for $325,000. Now, a couple of things about that offer. The original offer to purchase the land from Gola was $525,000, so it's a decrease of $200,000 over the original selling price. A couple of reasons for that change in the offer to purchase the land. One is that engineering studies have been completed that show there may be some significant soil quality issues as well as some soil compaction issues that hamper the development of the site. Both of these soil issues have to be dealt with before the site is developed, whether it's developed by Gola, whether it's developed by Laurel Street, whether it's maintained and later developed by the city. These soil issues have to be addressed. So that's one reason that the offer has been reduced. The other reason that the offer has been reduced from $525 to $325 is because we have placed several conditions on the sale of the land that could appreciably impact the value of the land. Among the conditions that we're placing on the sale of the land are that, first of all, the land must be developed with at least 115 studio, two-bedroom, and one-bedroom apartments, which was the original intent as proposed by council and by Gola back in 2014 and before. The second condition is that the property has to be developed with a development cost of at least $14.6 million. A third condition is that a minimum of 25 units shall be available for workforce housing for households earning 80% of the area median income for 10 years. After the initial 10-year affordability period, a minimum of 15% of units will be available as workforce housing for households earning 80% of the area median income for an additional 20 years. So I think, Councilman Montgomery, that's the 30-year period, is the 10 plus the 20. So those conditions are actually the conditions that were on the original sale of the land under the nonprofit provision of selling to a nonprofit carrying out a public purpose. We believe that those conditions, along with the soil compaction issues, do justify the reduction in the offer from $525 to $325. The current tax, and there are a couple other conditions that we've also attached, such as Gola has to be a partner in the new development of 757 North, which they are. The current tax value of the land is $253,000, so the offer is greater than the tax value of the land. In addition, the item authorizes the City Council to provide a grant to 757 North of $325,000 to assist with the soil issues that you have that have been identified by the developer and their engineers. Happy to answer any questions. Representatives from 757 North and which include Laurel Street and Gola are both here. So that's the first item, Part A.
Yes.
Part B is then a request for a loan of $1,250,000 from Laurel Street or 757 North in order to actually complete the development. Altogether, the soil compaction, contamination issues, as well as a few cost overruns, have increased the project cost by about $1.6 million. About $1 million of that is actual soil issues. The other $600,000 is just the cost in construction, even though the project has been engineered down as much as possible. Just construction costs, which I think we're seeing on some of our projects also, is continuing to go up. Again, it would be a long-term, low-interest deferred loan. It would include workforce and affordable housing units. I think that 29 of the 115 units, so 25%, even exceeding our guidelines, would be made available for workforce housing. And they also have provided a breakdown. So assuming that you all are okay with Part B, an item would be prepared and brought forward in December for your consideration on Part B. Part A is actually for consideration in November. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes. Thank you. Councilmember Burke.
Yes, I have one question right now. The rent, what will be the rent?
The rents, Councilmember Burke, let's see, would range, let me go through them here. Unit size would be 500 square feet for the studio, 615 to 766 for one bedroom, and 811 to 1,005 for two bedroom. Market rate rents will range from 1,045 to 1,445 for the market rate. For the affordable units, those rents would be $757 for one bedroom units. Excuse me, $757 for the studio apartments and $841 for the one bedroom apartments.
Well, the reason I asked this question, the ones we just completed, the rents that they were talking about, why these rents are what they are? Are we talking about the same thing? People on certain incomes will have an opportunity to rent there?
Yes, ma'am, Councilman Burke. In both cases, it would be for households earning 80% of the median income or less.
Okay, I just need to understand if somebody's going to pay $575 and then somebody's going to pay $675. I see here something seem to be different. Am I not thinking right?
The square footage is what you really should be looking at. If you look at if you start doing the math and in Mr. Coe's situation, those properties were 350 to 400 square feet for a downtown unit. These are in the central area, but right outside of downtown, going to be more square footage. So if you actually we did the math on it, you're probably looking at a lesser rent for these units, but a lesser rent per square foot for these units and a larger unit is what you would have.
I know it, but that same amount that people are making, they could do better going into a $575, even though you're talking about more square footage. And that will keep some people who would even want to live there not able to move there.
Councilmember Montgomery.
On the time frame for a loan, again, it's the original portion is the 20 years, and then after that it's the 10-year after, which reduction in percentage of the number of units that are allocated for workforce units. And then thereafter, again, for the minute's sake, with the portion of dollars that are paid back from this, those dollars are going back to what?
Those dollars also go back into the housing fund to be used for future housing purposes.
Councilmember Best.
Thank you. I think this is implied, but I just wanted to get on the record. When you say 80%, you're talking about up to 80%, no more than 80%.
That is correct.
And the rents that are specified on item B, the memo on page 23, to what degree are those specific numbers binding?
Say that again.
The $757 a month for the studio units, $841 a month for the one-bedroom units. To what degree are those specific numbers binding on the recipient?
Those numbers represent 80% of the median income. So, of course, if the median income changes, those numbers would change reflective. But the rents are going to be part of the conditions. So, yes, if the median income changes for the 80% level, those rents could also change reflective.
How are the 757 and 841 numbers calculated, please?
I'll have to ask Ms. Brooks or Mr. Starks.
Okay, so, hi, Kamina Brooks with Laurel Street Residential. Thank you for your time. And to answer your question, it's actually 737 are the studio and 842 are the one bedrooms, and those rents are calculated based on a Novogradac rent and income calculation, and that is also used for North Carolina Housing Finance Agency when they calculate tax credit rent. So it is a national rent and income level, but we look at it for the county, Forsyth County, and it takes a median average income of the Forsyth County income.
And what specifically does that number represent, please? 757. When you're talking about someone who is at 80% of the median income,
what?
You calculate that 757. What does that represent?
That represent about a $30,000 to $40,000 annual income.
I'm sorry. How do you calculate the number given that starting point of a data?
How do you calculate the 737?
All right, you're saying, all right, here we've got somebody who's earning $30,000 to $40,000.
Mm-hmm.
How do you arrive from that number at paying $757 a month for a studio apartment?
How do we arrive at, I guess I'm not following your question. How do we arrive at the income?
No, ma'am. I know how you get the income number.
Right.
How do you get the rent level? The rent number.
I think I understand the question. It's based on 30% of the income of the individual that go towards rent.
Right.
So what the binding number is in this agreement is they have to provide an apartment that can be rented for 30% of the estimated income of someone who is making 80% of the median.
That's right.
All right. That's why I wanted to be clear. So that's what's in the agreement, basically. And this is what it currently calculates out to.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Councilmember Light.
I'm a little confused about the first part of this, that the sale price would be $325,000, and then a request for the same amount in a grant. So we would, in fact, then not have get any income from this sale.
Right.
Councilman Montgomery.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Page, originally we weren't, because we were going to be putting those dollars back into the project in the original agreement. And so I think the change here is that before there wasn't going to actually be dollars exchanged because of how we were going to do in terms of the sale of the process, but because of the requirements that they need to meet with within the sale and the organization and some of the binding pieces to the property, now they're actually going to pay for the property, and then we're going to put those dollars back in, physical dollars back into the project, which before there wasn't going to be an exchange of actual dollars. We were just going to put those dollars back into the project through the property. Is that correct, Ms. Page?
You are correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilman Burke.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bessie, for making that a little bit clearer, those figures. The question I want to ask will be about the soil. What was there to make that soil contaminated? What used to be in that spot?
There's a couple items. One, the potential contamination is a result of some kind of upstream laundry facilities that showed in the Phase 1 environmental assessment done by a third-party engineer. And the second item is related to the soil compaction and soil settlement that has to take place prior to construction of any physical structure on the site. And that's actually taking place on the site, and that'll be kind of a 4-week to 6-week period of settlement that has to take place, and that also is a result of a third-party engineer assessment.
That was one of our very historical areas there, and it was a booming area for minorities. They had the restaurants, so it's the cleaners, I guess.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
It's a most historical church. You all may not want to hear my history, but when I first came to Winston-Salem, the question my mother asked me, do they still have the church sitting there? Because from a girl, she came to an AME Zion meeting right there. And I've said on many occasions, when we were developing downtown, we did make sure that Old Gola played a major part as far as trying to, with the economic development. And I believe the mayor at that time was working closely, and we were getting rid of the buildings. They had apartments, barbershops, dry cleaners, and other things.
Okay. Okay.
Any more questions, concerns?
No comment.
Councilmember.
Question. Yeah. I just want to make a comment on this project, particularly to Goler and to Laurel Street, to say thank you for the diligence in this community and this effort. When we look at this is a project that Goler came and has worked very diligently and hard through changing economic times to get to the place of where they are now. But what I would like to point out is that they committed to the highest percentage of affordable and workforce housing units that we will have in any downtown project, and they committed to this prior to us having a policy in place, and it will be the longest term that we will be able to ensure that we have affordable housing in downtown, which totals out to 30 years, that we will ensure that there will be affordable housing units. And I say that it's important because although I'm very diligent in the process of what we did with affordable housing ordinance, we will not run out of a time where we don't need affordable housing in our community. And so to be able to ensure for the next 30 years, as downtown continues to change and transform, and surely where rent rates continue to go on the rise, that we are now being able to do a project where we can ensure that there continues to be affordable housing and workforce housing in a place of our community that needs it the most. And then looking at the percentage of participation that we're looking at in this process, a $15 million project with a total investment, including the dollars being reinvested through the property, totals just about $1.5 million or $1.6 million, which is about 10% or so of the total project cost, which again is less than percentage-wise less than what we were looking at in other projects. But again, we're getting even more, I think, for our bucks in this project. And again, I drive past that corner every day. And I'm looking forward to the day when the building is erected and we see what I believe in that area that GOLA has been working very diligently in, what I believe our city should be reflective, and that is a diverse community of individuals from different backgrounds, racial and ethnic backgrounds, and ages that come together and convene in our community, live, work, and play in the same place. Because what GOLA has created there is a place where you have individuals who are on the high end. When you look at the Gallery Loft apartments, then when you look right next to it at Golden Manor, you have our seniors who are living in downtown. And then when you look at the townhomes that are there, and you have homeowners, and you have the duplexes there, we have renters, and then now what we're introducing in this, that I believe is a roadmap to how our community should look, diverse from economic standpoints, diverse from racial standpoints, and diverse from the incomes. And so again, I say kudos to you for the hard work that you've been doing.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember McIntyre.
My question was answered. Thank you.
Just a comment. I was at the Large Cities Council meeting at the National League of Cities Conference on Saturday morning in Nashville, and when the open mic sort of question went around the room to the attendees there, what was the foremost problem in your city? Our peer cities around the country were answering affordable housing, And the comments were breaking up into two big groups. There were the cities that were already being hammered, and the cities that were coming into the problem. And the cities that are already being hammered were like one California city in sort of the mid-size range. I think of us as mid-size. We're at the lower edge of the large cities, Council. Said that their median one-bedroom rent in their city was now $2,500 a month. And that meant essentially that lower and middle-income families were being priced out of their city altogether. And then there were other cities like us that were coming into the problem and still had time to get a handle on the problems. But the urgency of our getting ahead of this is clear.
Thank you. Mayor Jones.
Yes, I don't want to belabor this, but Councilmember Burt made me think that I wanted to also thank the Golar CDC, but we have to go back one step further, because when all that redevelopment was going on there, the Golar Church had made a decision to move out. It actually bought land out there. But then I guess it was Reverend Larte made a decision, no, we're going to stay here. And boy, look at it's developed all around it, so it was a smart decision. And now Reverend Banks is carrying that through, and then Michael Suggs and the CDC is making it really happen. So I feel really good about what's happening there.
Thank you. Mayor Burt.
Yes, the only thing that and after we had that last meeting that I disagreed, even though I'm going to vote for this project, I did not agree with the 30-year. I felt that the 20-year for the workforce of what we were trying to do should have been, but with the whole goal of being business people wanting the project to move forward, then they went along with this. And also, Mayor and the rest of us as we speak, we can also think about the boards before this board, how they had the desire to be progressive. And I've also said to the mayor, as well as the city manager, I don't think you do enough to let the public know what a fine council people you have who are progressive people who vote for projects that make a difference for all the citizens in this community.
Thank you, Councilmember Burt. Again, just to add on to what everybody has already said, we have people in our community, all of them are great citizens, and we always have people that talk the talk, that they're going to help make the city better, and we're going to be inclusive, and we're going to get these other communities, plugged in to what we want our city to look like. But, we thank organizations like Golar CDC and the Atkins CDC and even some of the churches who have stepped up to try to make this happen for the city. Again, you wonder, where would we be if community development hadn't come into its own? Mr. Brooks and Mr. Page, about 20, 30 years ago? Where would we be as a city? Because a lot of the development that's downtown and around in the areas of the city that could have gotten left behind and could have been more gentrified than what some areas are, it has taken community development to help bring some synergy to our city, as Councilmember Montgomery and Taylor said, to make it better, just like where we're trying to go. I'm looking forward to seeing that project go up. I'm going to pull a pin from Councilmember Burke. That dry cleaners was my first job that I had in the 9th grade at Kennedy Junior High. I would leave school and walk to the cleaners, and that's why I worked for about a year or so at that cleaners there. Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was not going to say anything. I'm going to say something reluctantly. Anytime I'm reluctant and I say something, usually the paper just hammers me. But you know what? I'm going to say it anyway because it needs to be said. Part of the affordable housing process is removing the barriers from people who would ordinarily want to go live somewhere who can't because of socioeconomic status. Well, there is another group of people who are being denied, more or less, the ability to live in certain places based on criminal record. Now, I'm not saying, let's let someone who committed a felony a year ago do X, Y, and Z, but I am saying someone who 20 years ago made a mistake, and if we're putting city dollars into a project, let's not let criminal record, somebody who is a law-abiding citizen now, who made a mistake 20 years ago, and I know we all have, to be prevented from living in a certain area. Now, I don't care whether it's downtown or any other part of this city. We want to make sure we're removing the socioeconomic status barrier, but we certainly don't want to have barriers when it comes to criminal record. And I know that's a scary, scary word, but there's going to be some people moving back into this community, and if we're going to plan for 20 and 30 years down the road, if we're using city dollars, we can't create those barriers. So I'm not saying anything about the Gola project, anything about the Cole project. As we consider affordable housing, let's make sure that we look at ways to tweak and remove all of the barriers, and not just one or two that we are familiar with and that is sexy to talk about. I'm sure it won't be hammered tomorrow, but it's got to be said.
Point well taken, Councilmember Taylor, but you're correct. And part of that is part of the vision and the strategies is that we have a great human relations department, and part of affordable housing or workforce housing or reentry and all of those are part of this strategy that we're working on, as you know, to be more inclusive. That we all know that the government is releasing ex-offenders back into the mainstream. And as a city council or any governing body, we cannot discriminate. And we would hope that others will hear our message, that we will be, City Madam Attorney, we will be making sure that we are on top of that people are not being held down or back because of priors in their life that they have now been cleared for to go forward in their life. And we don't want to be a part of that, but point well taken. Point well taken.
If the time is right, I make a motion to approve this item.
I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next agenda, please. Item
G4, resolution authorizing submission of continuum of care homeless grant application, acceptance of grant funds, and execution of agreements.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
before we get started, can we have a formal motion to excuse Councilmember Montgomery?
Can I be excused, or is it a record into the record?
Well, if they would just go ahead and formally excuse you, that would be best,
Okay.
from participating in the discussion and voting on G4 and 5.
You're at my mercy. I move that we excuse Councilmember Montgomery.
And I second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Good evening again, and I will try to introduce this item, and I have assistance during the presentation. But the item itself authorizes submission of the Continuum of Care Homeless Assistance Grant application to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and authorizes agreements and submissions of that application. HUD published the application on September the 17th, which was just right around a few weeks ago. And proposals are due on November the 20th, which is just a couple of weeks. So it's not a very long time that you have to prepare for this. But Exhibit A indicates the projects that are recommended for funding. The applications were reviewed by the city and the Continuum of Care Rating Panel, and the panel's funding recommendations were reviewed and approved by the Continuum of Care and the Commission on Ending Homelessness. The programs differ by type of activity and population served, and you all have seen these in the past. And I think the one important aspect I'd like to point out is that HUD has already indicated that there may be insufficient funding to fund all the projects. And should this occur, HUD will select the projects and the funding amounts. But those projects have been provided for you in the attached listing, and I will now allow the other presenters to make comments if there are comments that they would care to make.
I'm Tim West from Community Business Development Department, and I'm here with Mr. Brooks just to answer any questions about these if you have questions. We also have a few members in the audience who represent the agencies that are recommended for funding here.
I have a question. I always do, don't I? And I would like to see again coming forward to us in some type of report. You know, when you put the money down to figure what it is, but you don't give me any details, such as if all of these people are providing rental assistance, how many people are they providing rental assistance to? Where are the communities and the developments or apartments or whatever it is that are receiving this money? What communities do they live in? You know, I'd like to see that, and the amounts that they are giving, you know, to the customers. Again, this goes back to the other item we voted on, the allocations committee. I would just be interested to see again how this is, either there's some continuous improvement in this, or is it that we just, almost like the housing authority, we give vouchers. And if that's the case, and I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers, why wouldn't we just let the housing authority give the vouchers? Because it seems like we kind of do two things the same thing almost. Same type situations, customers, same working poor. So, could I see more detail?
Yes, we'll get you more detail.
And how much goes towards administration as well?
Okay, we'll get that information to you.
Any other comments or questions?
Will we all get that, Madam?
Yes.
Well, thank you. Before Monday.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Can we get a motion for approval?
Got to come from one of them.
Well, that's right. You're out.
I'm going to move for this, Madam, and when I get my other information, we have until Monday to look at it. Okay. So I'll move for
A second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Item number 5.
Item G5, resolution authorizing awards of recaptured federal fiscal year 2014 emergency solutions grant funds.
This item authorizes the grants of recaptured federal fiscal year 2014 emergency solution grant funds to local agencies. And I'm sort of going to deviate from what we have here because I think I can make it a little simpler where you may be able to follow it somewhat better. Winston-Salem was awarded $158,915 in fiscal year 2014. All of that money was allocated to various agencies. Of that amount, $13,931 remains. The remaining money will be recaptured after June 30th, 2016. So what this item is requesting is to reallocate some of those recaptured money. And the way we're recommending that be done is United Way had received funding, the $11,500 funding in the prior award, but they didn't sign a contract. There was no contract executed for that money. So the money is still there. So what's been recommended is that money be reallocated to United Way. Once that 11.5 is reallocated, you have 1,902 that was awarded to Family Services. Family Services did not use all of the 1,900. Of that amount, 529 is remaining. That 529 is being requested to go back to United Way for rapid rehousing. So that takes care of the 13,000 funding request. So it's a reallocation of funds that were awarded for last year that either have not been used because the contract was not signed, or all of the funds were not used by the agency funds were awarded to. What you have at the bottom is a breakdown of that 13.9, which shows that of that 1,900, 632 would go to Family Services, 635 would go to Salvation Army, and 635 would go to Samaritan Ministries, United Way would get the 11.5, and United Way would get the 529. Of course, the 529 is for rapid rehousing, and the rest of the money is for emergency shelter. And this recommendation was one that also came from the Continuum of Care Committee. So that, I believe, is a simple breakdown of how this request is being submitted. And we have Mr. West here who can answer any questions, specific questions that you may have about it if you have any.
I have a question. This item was before us last month, am I correct?
Yes, I think we brought a memo.
And wasn't it first the total 13,900 was being requested basically by just United Way, correct? No?
I'm sorry, I don't recall.
Last month, we were just talking about just the 11,500, and as we considered the questions that were brought up last month, we looked at the total picture of the funds that were left available, and it was 13,931.32. There was a little bit of other cleanup money that was there, the 1,900 left over from Family Services after they bought security cameras last year, and then there was $529 left in rapid rehousing. So we put it all together into this one item.
How did we come to, I mean, outside of thinking, well, Bethesda has 32,000, they have more money, they had more money funded than others. Is that how we came to just say, well, Family Services, Salvation, and Samaritan should get a bump?
That's correct. As the panel and the continuum of care have talked about the equality of ESG funding, this funding source is recognized as a historical legacy that Bethesda Center had a fairly large amount, but instead of cutting Bethesda Center or trying to make funds equal that way, they've looked for opportunities when there is growth in the funding to make small amounts available to the other agencies.
But I guess, Mr. West, is that it? I guess, again, just as we've stated before with the allocations committee, is everybody doing the same amount of service or work, same amount of staff, same amount of customers? You know, I just, again, I know it's probably I know it's a strategy to this, but again, as we move forward, I will be one of those council members constantly questioning this process and as to the performance of the organizations. Again, I commend all of them for doing the good work, but I am a little concerned. It reminds me of a shell game now, that we're moving this money around without some type of, I don't know, some money came available that didn't get used because the training or the contract didn't get signed, and so let's reallocate. But is it fair to all of the bodies involved to decide that these three plus United Way, again, gets the money? I'm just asking the question. That's all. And I don't know how I feel about this, Mr. Brooks. I know every year since I've been here, I've been talking about this one. I just don't know how I feel about this.
Well, I believe getting you some information on the past performance of the organizations can surely help with that, and then having an understanding with the Continuum of Care rating panel of what the desire of City Council would be with respect to any recaptured funds and funding in general.
Correct. I would like that. Councilmember Taylor.
Mr. Brooks, was there an application process that was implemented to award the funding to these particular agencies?
Initially, yes.
Okay. So it's not like staff kind of got together and just said,
No.
you know, based on the other panels, this is who we feel like the money should go to.
No.
So my concern is just equally that everybody gets a chance to come to the table and to apply. And
Yes.
So everybody had that equal chance to apply for this funding.
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
I have,
Just one.
go ahead, Councilmember Burt.
Do we have any that was once on the list? Do we have others who applied at other times? So that's what the council person is talking about.
This is all of the agencies that had applied in that process.
I'm talking about at other times, Mr. West, as long as
Past
you've been
years.
working with this project through the years. can you go back and look at your records where there were some others who applied, maybe they didn't get it, and they became discouraged and didn't want to come to the table? I believe that's
Right.
what the
That's
council
what I'm
people have been asking.
Yes, ma'am, I'd like to double check on that, but there may have been.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Bessie.
Just one comment, something for us to keep in mind that actually segues off a point that Councilmember Burke just made. Agencies can get discouraged in the process. The more, especially when we're dealing with reallocation of, in terms of the size of the program and the dollars that are awarded, a relatively minor reallocation. The more complex, the more questions we answer, the more data we want, the more process we're requiring staff to go through. You know, the more of the available money gets burned up in our process and in preparing responses to our questions. So I'd ask us to keep under consideration when we ask for additional process, sort of unintended side effects that we could have.
So,
Point
may
well
I
taken.
say one thing? That's a good point you make, council member. Now, if we are doing our jobs and we're keeping our records, it should not take long. You know, all of us on this internet now and all that. It shouldn't take long to go back and just punch that and pull. In fact, Mr. West could probably take no more than 20 minutes or 25. Because they tell me now, oh, you don't want me to get on that stuff. But how they
Go
do
ahead,
now,
Councilmember
even in
Burke.
legal people, it's all on the internet. And all they do now, even in making your wills and all that, is just go right back and punch the new things in. So, but it's a good point, attorney.
Again, I guess where I'm going with this, and I continue to say this all the time when certain particular items come before this council, is that we find ourselves that we do things because it's the way we've always done it. We find ourselves doing it that way because it's easy. We now need to start challenging ourselves, as you even said, Councilmember Bessie, when we go to these conferences and things, we pick up on a lot. And we realize sometimes that we're head and shoulders above a lot of our peers, but that doesn't mean we can't stop learning to be better. We're good at what we do, but we can be better. All I'm asking for, as Councilmember Taylor alluded to, is that, yes, everybody applied initially, but when it came down to this little bucket of money, how was that done? Did we just rely on the people that had applied initially, or did we look at everybody in total before we decided on these? That's what I'm saying. When we decide to make these decisions, we have to make sure we're doing them consistently. All I'm asking is for consistency, that's all.
I understand, and I think what we'll attempt to do is prepare a list of every agency that has applied for these types of funds over the past 5 years, those that were funded, those that were denied, what the amount was, and some statistics on their performance.
Thank you. Any, Councilmember Taylor?
I think Councilmember Bessie has made a good point. We don't want to overuse staff time because money does get burnt up in the process. But all I'm asking this council and for the staff, I think we got to have a new direction or a more interesting direction, and just, I do not want to forget mom and pop. You know, whatever that means to you. But there are some smaller agencies who do the work who are not at the table. So I'm going to say it every time. Let's not forget about mom and pop. That's all I'm asking.
Thank you. Any other comments? I need a motion.
Oh.
No. We
I
got
wasn't excused on this item.
Oh, you weren't.
I thought we did 4 and 5.
I said 4 and 5 in my introductory comments, so you're actually excused
Okay.
from 4 and 5.
Oh,
All right. If that's cleared up, madam, I move for approval.
second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Item 6.
Item G6, request for financial assistance from Goler Community Development Corporation.
Mr. Brooks and I just keep going back and forth this afternoon.
You own it.
This item is for informational purposes only, based upon direction of Finance Committee. An item will be brought back in December for your consideration. But staff has been in discussions with the Goler CDC for several months regarding the possibility of developing and operating a hydroponics/aquaponics job training facility. GOLA personnel have been working with potential partners for several months. They've done some site visits and looked at several other similar facilities to what's being discussed. They've done some extensive research on the whole topic. One of the partners that they have looked at collaborating with is Help Our People Eat, an organization known as HOPE. This nonprofit agency partners with the interfaith community to prepare and transport nutritious meals on Sunday to children in neighborhoods with the highest food insecurity. HOPE also delivers fresh produce to families and provides training programs on a healthy diet and recipes. Some of the other partners that GOLA has been talking to include the Tech Community College, the Workforce Development Board, which is part of the Piedmont Triac Regional Council of Governments, the Ministers' Conference of Winston-Salem and vicinity, North Carolina State University, and the Winston-Salem County School System are just some of the partners they've identified. Based on the extensive research that they've conducted, GOLA is now prepared to proceed to the next step. And they've identified a site and made an offer on that site on the south side of Polo Road. The current request for that, or the current offer that has been made by GOLA is $295,000 to purchase 4 acres of land. That offer has been accepted contingently by the owners of the property, and it be contingent upon the site not having any major environmental issues. GOLA is now requesting from the city assistance in purchasing that land, or $295,000 for the purchase of that land. In addition, GOLA will be back in future months to request additional assistance from the city to assist with soft costs such as the Phase 1 and or Phase 2 and testing that may be required, any legal fees that may be required as part of it, as well as site plan and design work that may be done as part of it. Overall, it's estimated that the total city participation in the project could be approximately $1 million. It's estimated that the project could employ up to 20 individuals at any one time, but just as important, it would also provide food to several hundred children and families per week. If approved by City Council when we bring it forth next month, the city's participation would come from the 2014 General Obligation Economic Development Bonds. Happy to answer any questions you may have, and Mr. Suggs is here from GOLA CDC as well to talk about their project if you have any questions today.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Mayor, God, watch out. Did you hear that? You didn't hear
That's
good.
twice. That's twice.
Oh, isn't it nice to have a good sense of humor? What I was going to say, we have a lot of people feeding people. Do we have a list of all the folks who are feeding people in this city? Sometimes I go on a corner, I see some people feeding people, and when on Sundays we see them. I just need to know.
We could probably get some for you if we don't already have some. We can get some for you.
And the place in Durham, where is that located, please?
It's called UDI.
Please come to the podium. Name,
Michael Suggs,
address.
889 North Liberty Street. The organization is called UDI. It's a community development corporation headed by a gentleman named Ed Stewart. But we've also been working with North Carolina State University and people in their agriculture department. We've made several trips to them, and they're actually consulting us on the whole process. And we plan to bring in North Carolina A&T State University, who's my alma mater, into the process also.
Well, I went there too. Do you have they, it's already, if I wanted to go visit, and it's in place, if I want to go to Durham to see this, like
Yes.
you're talking about 4 acres here,
Yes, ma'am.
and people are working, and you can see the end product.
They're still in the beginning stage of their process also, but they are starting to hire people, and they're, as we are, they're working with North Carolina State University.
Do we have any place in the country that's already doing this, if I want to go visit?
Yes, there's several. Milwaukee has a place. Cleveland, Ohio. And it's really been we're kind of behind the 8 ball in a way. I mean, it's happening all over the country. It's happening up north, and they're doing it in greenhouses, but they're also doing it in enclosed buildings also, because what they're finding is that you can really produce the produce at a more efficient rate. And just like in Winston-Salem, we have one of the highest as far as food desert areas. So that's one of the reasons that we're doing it, and obviously the job creation is another piece of it.
I noticed that, Mr. Page, you find and make sure I'm going to take a trip to see one of those that's in place, where people are working and showing the results of a place like this.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to see it. Okay.
Mayor.
Madam Chairman, I know this is an area that you're very interested in. I appreciate your pushing this forward. The thing I like about this is that it creates employment opportunities directly right into operation. It also begins to address some of the food disparities. But I think the thing I'm probably most excited about, if I'm understanding, is the training will maybe create some entrepreneurship opportunities that individuals can take this idea, take it back to their neighborhood, do a hydroponics or a center there, and address food disparities within their own neighborhoods. So hopefully it'll be like a fishes in the Lowe's. It'll just keep growing and be there. So I'm excited about this and look forward to it.
She says she's going to call you mayor from now on.
Councilmember Montgomery.
My comments echo the mayor's in the sense that anytime we can look at opportunities of helping to train individuals for work and also tackle another community issue, I think that we have to take a real deep look at this, and I'm glad that Councilmember Adams has pushed us to the place where we are now. One of the things I'll be interested in, and we'll see how the opportunities develop, are the type of skills that the individuals are being trained to do in the hydroponic work, not just the entrepreneurial opportunities that will come from that, but the type of skill sets that they'll be trained to do also cross over into some of the same type of skill sets in which we're looking at in other parts of our community, such as within Innovation Quarter and some of the type of things that they'll be doing there. So it'd be interesting to see how we can connect those pipelines to where we're training people here in this area and how that connects over into other job opportunities for people to move up in what they're doing. And that is something that is truly missing in our community in terms of how we're truly creating that pipeline. And I think this has opportunity to really help do that.
Any other comments?
You want a motion?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm caught up right now, and I apologize.
You get your motion?
Yes, I am. I have pushed this now for 6 years, Mr. Page, Mr. Brooks, and Mr. Garrity. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Suggs, thank you for helping with this endeavor. We do a lot of things, and we all work in different areas that we're all very, very good at and passionate about. But I guess my passion has been about food. And until all of the data and all of a sudden the inundation of information we're getting from all over not just the nation, but here in Winston-Salem. Tomorrow there's a meeting at 1 o'clock for those of you that want to come at the Enterprise building. And it is about the possibility of taking this even one more big step forward, and hopefully we'll be talking about the other piece that kind of goes with this, and that's the manufacturing, micro or manufacturing concept of actually creating lots of jobs through manufacturing, packaging, jarring, canning, food that we grow here for the people, not just in Winston, maybe all over the place, and that money gets to come back into our community. So there'll be a lot of stakeholders there tomorrow if you're interested, from 1 to 2. But are there any more comments?
I just want to make the motion, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is it information or is it motion?
It's information.
Oh, it's just for information.
It'll be back. It'll be back next
It'll be
month.
back next month. Thank you, Mr. Suggs.
Thank you.
Item G7, report on revitalizing urban commercial areas 3, funding recommendations.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of council.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As you know, in 2006, City Council established the Revitalizing Urban Commercial Areas, or RUCA, program to help revitalize some of the city's declining urban commercial areas. The general obligation bonds approved in 2014 designated an additional $2 million for a third round of RUCA projects. 10 areas were eligible to apply for funding: Patterson Glen, Old Greensboro, Barbara Jane, North Side, Box Mountain, Old Rural Hall Road, Pleasant, Walltown, Northwest and Patterson, Jetway, New Walkertown, Carver, South Main Street, Cassell, and Trade Northwest. The map that should have made its way around now will give you an idea of the areas that were eligible. There were 8 areas in Tier 1 and Tier 2 on the map that received funding in either Round 1 or Round 2. So the 10 that were eligible to apply this round were the remaining areas within Tier 1 and Tier 2. 3 of these areas submitted proposals with potential projects: Patterson Glen, Old Greensboro, and Jetway. The spreadsheet that's included along with the memo outlines the potential projects, preliminary cost estimates, and staff recommendations for RUCA funding in each of the 3 areas. Based on experience with the previous 2 rounds of RUCA projects, the actual cost of the projects may increase to ensure relevant building code and zoning requirements are met. To account for this variation, city staff recommends including a contingency amount of $630,000, which is based on 35% of the $1.8 million designated for projects. These funds will be used to fill the gaps between the preliminary estimate and actual project costs for the projects. Staff also recommends that the remaining $451,721 of this allocation be made available to property owners within any of the 10 areas that were eligible to apply for the third round of funding. Project applications will be considered on a first-come, first-served basis and subject to the same processes for approval and reimbursement. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions, just a comment. We do know that some of the funding was originally allocated to the Pleasant Walltown area and the Walltown Peachtree area in the past. Now, I won't make any excuses, but I will say that in the Walltown Peachtree area, we did have 1 person to get severely sick and 2 people to pass away, which limited their ability to access those funds, and we ended up moving it to another project. So I just asked, if possible, we could utilize not necessarily the contingency fund for the Phase 3 projects, but the reserve funds for future projects in the Walltown Peachtree area or in the Walltown Pleasant area, which is one of the areas where we're putting our district police office to help to revitalize and spark some additional economic improvements in the area.
Councilmember Montgomery.
Question: this is speaking specifically to the new dollars and not the other dollars that were allocated, correct?
Correct.
So but the dollars I'm trying to just kind of go to Councilmember Taylor's point. The dollars that were allocated for those areas, are those dollars not still set aside for those? Because the last report I got, which was just a month ago, still showed those dollars supposed to be using in those areas.
There are funds that are available in the Peachtree Walltown area that I can give you a ballpark of. I believe it's around $190,000 is still available from the RUCA 2 funding for the Peachtree Walltown area.
And so you're saying to set aside additional funds?
In the event that additional funding is needed, we got a request today, which is a little bit definitely behind schedule, and also there may be a potential request in the future at the Walltown the Walltown Pleasant area, and I just like to be able to access those funds if projects come forward in the next couple of weeks or so. Or more.
This is for information, right? No? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Think about this.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Burke.
Is this the last thing on the agenda?
Yes, it is.
And I can make a comment now. Madam Chair, this does deal indirectly with finance. I have been in communication with the city manager about my dissatisfaction of things that I feel should not be allowed in this city. Some of you are aware there's a department with a lot of frustration. I asked him to give to me the jobs, how many jobs we have in this department, and I found out, which I told them we need to hang our heads in shame, that the salaries that are being given are going to the white males, and then white females. The Latinos and the blacks are making some of the lower salaries. I do not accept when I'm told what we're saying we ought to be doing. You all have sat here this evening, afternoon starting last evening, talk about how people are going to be able to live in certain apartments, how they're going to survive. And we have a city department that is some see not being fair. It's more than one in this city not being fair to the employees, and the ones who are being not treated fairly happen to be blacks. Now, in a city of this size, I'm going to give you some figures that I think that the city manager gave to me. People who actually live in Winston-Salem and work in Winston-Salem, 45%. Then I want you to know people who live outside of Winston-Salem, 26%. And people who don't even live in the city and county, 29%. And we talk about trying to get our citizens involved in jobs, better living conditions. But if we cannot be the humane example to say to the residents in this city, we'll open the door for you to have jobs. We have some of the smartest people in Winston-Salem. They have worked in these companies where they have dealt with international affairs. We're not a slow city. And we have some fine people who've been in good jobs, but they have been downsized in this community. And I'm talking about diverse, white, blacks, who are unemployed, and their children are suffering. And they have been paying taxes in this city. And I think our city can do a better job. And I'm going to say this as clear as I possibly know how, Mr. City Manager. Nobody should be bogarting and bullying human beings in this city. And no taxpayer who are employees in this city should be afraid of any of your assistant managers, your supervisors, your directors. These are hard-working human beings going and coming, not making much of any kind of salary. And it's a disappointment. It's a disappointment. Years ago when I started, we didn't even have a black in a job that could make a decision until I questioned Mr. Stewart and say, why does Mr. Beatty have to come through you? Joe Barrier and Pat Swan don't have to come through you. And he went to the drawing board. And sure, we see women and minorities in better jobs, but when you go back to it, it is still people not even paying taxes in this city or the county carrying out money when we have capable citizens who can be. As you hear people who are campaigning talking about the poor, well, they need to come to Winston-Salem. When you hear them talking about women not having opportunities, and we have capable, smart women who can do the job. And then when I heard the chairman say that the same old way we do things, I've said that to the city manager on just about every conversation we have. And I said to him, you inherited some problems. And you can't change minds of people, but you can monitor them. And if they're not carrying out their duties and responsibilities, send them, what did I tell you? Send them home. Yes. And all these excuses, sometimes you have what we can legally and legally cannot do. There are ways when you have heard these new elected officials talk about how they felt things ought to be, and then legal people got a little more busier and found ways that can be done. I think we should continue to question this. And I am not happy. And of course, that department is having a difficult time. We expect for people to understand nobody's playing with anybody in the city. And for us to do a better job in making our taxpayers who are employed in this city feel better about coming to work every day. And I don't want to hear any more flimsy excuses either. I've completed, Madam.
Thank you, Councilmember Burke. Any more comments for the good of the order? We've completed the agenda. Finance Committee meeting is over. Thank you.